Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Happy Friday. Whatever Friday it is when you hear this, I hope the weather is good. I hope it's nice and not too warm and not too humid, which I'm sure it will be in New York City very soon. Now, regardless, we're here for Friday Fundamentals. Friday Fundamentals is that short 5 to 10 minute format where we bring you this week's guest, who is Kathleen Roberge, CRO of Rocket Trip and really career CRO and career sales leader. And she's going to be talking about the reasons why salespeople fail. And she's written about this. It's a really powerful and thought-provoking and inspiring subject, actually. And so we can't wait to hear from her on those thoughts. But before we do that, we want to thank our sponsor. They put food on my table, at least, and perhaps food on yours if you use the platform effectively. Friday Fundamentals is brought to you by Outreach. Outreach triples the productivity of sales teams and empowers them to drive predictable and measurable revenue growth. By prioritizing the right activities and scaling customer engagement with intelligent automation, Outreach makes customer-facing teams more effective and improves visibility into what really drives results. So thank you, Outreach, for allowing us to have this show. Kathleen, welcome back to the show. Here's our question for you on Friday Fundamentals. What are the reasons that salespeople do not achieve success?
Thanks, Sam. I'm excited to be here. Let me tell you what I found over the many years that I've been in sales leadership position. This is going to sound very ironic, but 80% of all salespeople are not actually committed to sales as a profession. And I think that's really funny because obviously you need to be successful and committed to your career if you want to be successful. So I think a lot of the reasons why is because it's time consuming. You don't have to be licensed to be a salesperson. It doesn't require any certifications. So it's all on you to get yourself up to speed. And typically what you see is people don't do what they should be doing. They're not reading, they're not watching videos, they're not attending seminars. Knowledge is so important when you're in sales. And I basically see that people are not dedicating enough time to their own development. The second thing I see is lack of urgency. I don't know how many of you have read the book Amp Up Your Sales. It's a great read. It was actually on HubSpot's top 20 sales books of all time. I actually asked my entire sales organization, 80 plus people to read that last year. And one of the big takeaways is salespeople can compete way better if they are much more urgent in their approach. Ironically, only 7% of salespeople respond within 5 minutes of a prospect's inquiry, which means most people are lacking a sense of urgency. So I truly believe that being the first one to respond with some value can be the difference between winning and losing the business. The third thing, forgetting to listen. We all know that salespeople talk way too much. And when you speak, you are selling. When your customer speaks, they are buying. That's something to live by. So I think if you listen attentively, you pay attention, the customer will tell you everything that you need to know. Fourth thing, not using social media. I can't believe how many salespeople are not leveraging this great tool. I have some really great statistics here. 72% of salespeople who use social media in their sales process outperform their peers. Social sellers hit their sales quotas 66% more often than those who don't use social media. 54% of salespeople can track closed deals back to social media engagement. A lot of people are afraid to use social media. They think it's going to suck up too much of their time. They don't want to be bothered. Well, 50% of the salespeople who use social media regularly spend less than 10% of their time on it.
That's super
And then finally, not a lot of time, right? So 90% of top performing sellers use social media in their sales strategy. So focus on social media.
Got to use social media, everybody.
Yep. Hopefully that message was loud and clear. Not having the right attitude. This one's kind of obvious, but having the right attitude is the difference between winning and losing in my mind. And in sales, this is so important. Optimistic salespeople outperform pessimistic salespeople by more than 50%. And even when the pessimistic salespeople have much better selling skills. So, and I think, unfortunately, there's a lot to complain about in sales. I'm not getting good leads. The industry's in a downturn. The comp plan's terrible. It's so easy to complain, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So I always think that successful salespeople put out all that negativity aside. They focus on making things happen. The leads are bad, go find prospects yourself. The comp plan changed, sell twice as much. Those would be my responses. The next thing is not asking the right questions. Asking the right questions and getting some answers will give you what you need to sell effectively. So figuring out the pain points. Most salespeople get stuck in the rut of doing sales presentation, rather than figuring out what the prospect wants and why, unfortunately. And neglecting to do this and figuring out what the intention is of their prospect is a detriment. And they spend too much time and resources on things that don't matter in the sales process, and unfortunately then create a low probability of closes. Another big thing, giving up too easily. Most people think that salespeople are persistent and they never give up. The reality is they give up way too easily. And 92% of sales professionals give up after the fourth call. However, 80% of prospects say no 4 times before they say yes.
That we got to bold that and underscore that. That's a wild statistic.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, all these statistics are crazy. 50% of the sales that happen after the 5th contact, but most reps give up after just 2 contacts. It takes 8 cold calls to reach a prospect, and it takes 18 calls to reach a buyer. And frankly, I don't know too many salespeople that will make 18 calls. So putting yourself at a disadvantage. The other thing that I want to focus on, which I see is directly tied to failure in a sales position, is not prioritizing correctly. If you look at the amount of time that salespeople spend on non-selling related tasks, it's about 70% of their time. It's incredible how much time is not even selling. So figuring out, setting your priority list, figuring out what the most important things are that are tied to revenue, starting with your fixed appointments and then moving on to anything that you can think of in order to make your numbers. And then everything else that comes up has to be put off for either after hours or another time in the week. And I always say to salespeople, start a little earlier, work a little harder, and stay a little later.
I get it.
Not asking for referrals, this is so easy. I'm so surprised at how many people don't ask for referrals. When they go through a great sales experience, the prospect really gets to know you during this experience, and no one asks for a referral. And so what I found is that most of buying decisions do rely on peer recommendations. So this is the best possible situation you can have as a referral. And 83% of customers are happy to give a referral after a sales experience, but only 29% do because salespeople don't ask. So definitely ask for referrals. Not asking for the sale. This is a big one too. I see this a lot. You see all these interactions that are going on with the salesperson and the prospect, and most people start closing the sale at the very, very end of the sales process. Whereas, selling is starting to close right at the beginning and asking for the business. What do I need to do to get the business? What objective do you want to achieve in order for me to get your business? So asking for it from the very early engagement. And then finally, again, another obvious one, but I see it all the time, not having a plan or a goal. I think what happens is companies give you a goal and then you have no specific plan to get to that goal. And there's no way you can be successful without a plan or a strategy. And it's got to be specific. It's got to back into your goal so that you feel comfortable that daily, weekly, and monthly activities are going to get you to where you need to be. So I think getting in the habit of creating these smaller, consumable goals, you'll hit the big ones, no doubt. Bottom line, if you want to be successful in sales, you have to be committed to the profession. There's not a lot of secrets here. You have to work hard. You have to have a sense of urgency, a positive attitude. You have to know how to listen, have a plan, and prioritize your time correctly. It's that easy.
Probably the most packed Friday fundamentals ever, full of statistics and insights and data to back up all of these ideas. So this one probably bears listening to 2 or 3 more times if you're out there, because there's just so much data. So listen to what Kathleen says. Kathleen, remind us your email address for people that want to reach out to you and want to connect and maybe want to apply to work at Rocket Trip.
Sure. It's Kathleen, Kathleen, @rockettrip.com.
Fantastic. And if you're out there and you want to reach me, I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in, and then /Sam F. Jacobs. If you have not rated the Sales Hacker podcast in the iTunes store, please do so, as long as it's a 4 or a 5. If you have a very negative impression of the podcast, please keep it to yourself. We are looking for optimism here, as Kathleen has mentioned. Thanks so much to Outreach for sponsoring the show. And Kathleen, thanks so much for being on the show this week. It's been great having you as a guest.
Thanks, Sam.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.